The Smoking Mirror, Chapter 17. Carol scrunched her eyes tightly closed as they moved through the mist. The ambient sounds changed radically as they passed into the heart of Miklan. It sounded like they were now outdoors in some corner of the human world, with wide, spacious skies above them. She opened her eyes and was greeted not with the absolute darkness she had feared, but with an amazing otherworldly landscape. Above them, seemingly hundreds of feet away, the impossibly thick roots arched through the sky as if Miklan lay beneath some cosmic tree. Between the roots peeked trillions of gorgeous stars, their ancient light illuminating her surroundings more than the gloomy gray of the 9 deserts had ever done. Before them, the mist-shielded core of Miklan was dominated by a mind-boggling structure, a fortress formed of red crystal that jutted insanely this way and that in defiance of any human notion of symmetry or aesthetics. The complex sported twisted spires that nearly touched the roots above, and it sprawled for what seemed miles in all directions. The black lode terminated at a vast opening that gaped like a hungry maw. Carol's heart ached suddenly as it hadn't in some time. She's in there. Johnny squeezed her hand and then let go. Yeah, I can feel her too. Let's go save her, no? As they began to move toward the fortress, a huge parliament of owls fluttered out of its crevices to settle all around them, hemming them in. Huge lechuzas and smaller tecolotes cocked their heads silently and wouldn't move aside. When Johnny tried to push some out of the way with his foot, a group of them lifted into the air before him, hovering in silent menace, talons at the ready. Dude, what the heck? I wonder, maybe if we shift into flying creatures, we can just go above them. Sounds like a good idea. But then they might see us as even more of a threat. I don't know about you, but I'd rather not spend a lot of time fighting a horde of owls right now. Bigger fish and all. Yikes, exclusive mixed metaphors. Without warning, the wall of owls parted, and a strange beast approached, a sort of were-owl. A huge avian head, atop a feathered humanoid body, its legs bent like a bird's, and ending in enormous talons, its arms vast wings that presently hung somewhat like a feathered cape. It jerked forward with a strange, strutting step and regarded them, hostility and violence in its eyes. Ah, hell no. Johnny took his own owl feather in his hand. Johnny, no, don't antagonize the. As usual, he didn't listen to her. Instead, he shifted partially, imitating the being's form to a great degree. You're not the only one with a sharp beak, bro, he muttered gutturally. Foolish shifter, replied the were-owl with a hollow, reedy voice. I've worn this form for longer than your weak race has walked the earth, ever since the Third Age, when rains of flame effaced the world. Do you actually expect that I will be in the slightest intimidated by your mocking me? Probably not, but just so you know, I'm not intimidated by how super old you are, dude. Who freaking cares if you've been eating birdseed for 1,000,000 years? I'll still kick your feathered butt if you don't get out of the way. For what purpose do you approach Chiquinawa Miklan? Johnny laughed. Chicano Miklan? ¿Qué onda, homie? Is this where the raza go when they die? Insolent Gib, speak not with disrespect of Chiquinawa Miklan, the mighty halls of death. So that's the name of the fortress? Carol broke in, trying to diffuse the tension. Indeed. Within its dark, blood-tinged depths, souls find their final extinction. But you are living humans, and you cannot pass. Oh, yeah? Johnny's voice was sour. And who's gonna stop us, huh? I am Prince Muan, chief among the Tlatlacalo, keeper of Mictlantecuhtli's Strigine Brigade. Huh? Chief among the Tacos Locos, keeper of the grimy braids? Johnny turned to Carol. Can you translate? She sighed. He takes care of the owls. Ah. He made a dismissive motion with one wing. Man, you do need to tune into TV shows or surf the internet or something. You talk like dead people. Oh, sorry, that's right. Visibly controlling himself, Prince Muan spread his wings slightly. You have yet to respond to my question. What brings you to this place? Carol didn't wait for Johnny to smart off again. We're here for our mother. She's in there. She motioned with her head toward the fortress. So that's where we're going. We've crossed all the required obstacles, Prince Milan, and I'm pretty sure that means we get an audience with Lord and Lady Death. So if you'll just have your brigade get out of our way, we'll go talk to them. Impossible, wench. They are presently indisposed. Governing the underworld is no child's game, understand? They have not the time to entertain the sniveling quest of every. Let them approach. Two voices in unison uttered the words with enough volume that the Parliament owls actually shook, their feathers ruffled by the force of their ruler's command. The voices were spectral and monstrous, utterly inhuman, and creaking with hoarse and eldritch harmonics that no 12-year-old should ever have to hear. Carol's mind buckled at the mere thought of looking on the beings who had spoken. Muan ducked his head in obeisance. As you please, great ones. Holom, Chabi, move aside. The two of you as well, Hurakan and Kashiks. The screech owls that had blocked their way wheeled off to the dusky recesses in the crystalline walls of Chiquanawa Miklan. Prince Muan made a sweeping gesture with his right wing. Proceed. If your offerings do not satisfy my sovereigns, we will have occasion to speak one final time before I feast on your eyes. Okay, that wasn't awkward. Johnny smirked as he returned his uniform. Come, Carol, let's leave this loser behind us. They crossed the remaining distance between them and the entrance, around which scenes of death had been etched into the crystals. Bats flitted in and out of the darkness, twittering and diving at black beetles. Carol, having worn the form of a Kamasotsob, felt no fear of them. Okay, should be. Carol, having worn the form of a Kamatsots, felt no fear of them, but she took her brother's proffered hand all the same, and they stepped across the threshold. Inky blackness surrounded her, so she shifted just her eyes and let her wolf vision pierce the dark. They were proceeding along a corridor whose shape and dimension varied unpredictably. At times, the ceiling loomed yards above them. At others, it was just inches away. The walls closed in at them and then receded. No human mind designed this crazy place, Johnny muttered, glancing at her with feline eyes. No, an ancient sociopathic god did. He's got our mom. Johnny just grunted in reply, for the corridor had come to an end, emptying into a staggeringly cavernous hall lit by blue will-o'-the-wisps hanging suspended in the air. Ranged along the sides, standing at the ready between unevenly spaced stalagmites, were hundreds of skeletons, each clutching a spear, club, or scythe. Their eyes glowed with the same blue fire that flickered above. Several turned their skulls to regard Carol, and the nape of her neck prickled with fear. But the garrison of Calaca's only worried her for a moment. In the distance, she could dimly see two figures. Come closer, they urged in frightening voices. Snakes and scorpions skittered frantically across the floor at the sound. Gripping Johnny's hand more tightly, Carol kept putting one foot in front of the other. She slipped her free fingers into her pocket and felt for the bag of jewels. Oh, thank God. The sooner we get this over with, the better. Having faced the Achalob, she thought she would be prepared for Lord and Lady Death. She was not. The closer she came to them, the more oppressed she became by thick, swirling sewali, as if the sovereigns of Miklan exuded that dark magic. Her stomach twisted into knots at the sickly sweet smell of blood and flowers. The rulers of the underworld struck real horror in her soul. Seated on thrones molded from human bones, Lord and Lady Death loomed gigantic, nearly twice the height of a normal man and woman. He was gaunt and gray, his parchment skin pulled taut across his wiry muscles and abdomen so deeply sunken Carol could make out the outline of his spine. He wore a simple breechcloth, white with a single blue line at the fringed red edge, which was clearly dripping blood. His gnarled, thin legs were bare, but his splayed feet were fitted with black sandals. Draped across his shoulders was a tilma cape, bone white with the same turquoise stripe and fringe as his breechcloth. The cape was spattered with blood, which formed mind-twisting patterns as Carol stared. Around his neck was a yoke necklace of silver and turquoise, from which small golden-plated human skulls hung. Above this yoke, the skin of his lower jaw had been peeled away, exposing the bone. Though the rest of his face had flesh, it had worn thin and rotted in places, and his eyes were glowing red points in a circle of black. Atop his skull sat an extravagant headdress formed of owl feathers and silver. From each side jutted a vicious-looking spike. His companion was a more familiar sight to Carol, though not less frightening as a result. She wore a red weepil blouse skirt, and around her neck was a chain from which dangled human hands and skulls, small enough that Carol suspected they belonged to children. Her face was a fleshless skull over which she had draped a black mantle that extended past her knees. It glittered with silver stars. In one bony hand she grasped a black orb, in the other a sickle. La Santísima Muerte, thought Carol, dressed like a twisted copy of the Virgin of Guadalupe, a mockery of Tonantzin. She'd seen the image tattooed on arms and legs, displayed on t-shirts and truck windows. Not just an Aztec deity, Godmother Death was worshipped in the 21st century in the twins' own town by people whose lives skirted the edge of normalcy, people for whom danger and death were occupational hazards. I wonder if they'd be so eager to kneel to her if they were standing right here. On the high backs of the thrones perched owls and bats. Before the lord and lady stood an obsidian basin. Between them, some 10 yards away, a narrow archway led to the unknown bowels of the underworld. Johnny stood still, holding on loosely to Carol's hand. Thankfully, it seemed he had no desire for sarcasm. Raising long, thin fingers tipped with black claws, the Lord of Death pointed to the twins.
Behold, breathing children, having overcome every obstacle, you stand before us, we who bear the titles Mictlantecuhtli and Mictecacihuatl, King and Queen of Mictlan. You seek admittance to the deepest heart of our realm.
Carol stammered, Yes.
These are not questions, living girl, Lady Death hissed. Forbear speaking until you are commanded.
Mictlantecuhtli continued.
Your purpose here is known to us. We shall not interfere with your quest, as its object is also living, and therefore anathema to Mictlan. The Dark One awaits you, and you will either win passage out of our realm, or be destroyed utterly. First, you must satisfy our requirements. Have you gifts with which to pay our toll?
Swallowing heavily, Carol drew the little leather bag from her pocket and, releasing her brother's hand, walked to the basin in front of Lord Death's towering throne of bone. Pulling loose the drawstring, she poured the contents into the stone receptacle. The rubies, diamonds, emeralds, sapphires, and amethysts shined brightly and made a tinkling sound that felt distinctly out of place in that dark hall. Stepping back, she stared expectantly up at that giant, horrible face, choking back bile at the rank smell of rot that Mictlantecuhtli exuded. The ruler of the underworld nodded, once satisfied.
You may pass, Carolina Garza.
What about my brother?
He must pay his own price.
Johnny finally spoke. But I lost my gems. Godmother Death snarled in disgust.
Then you must offer other tender, churlish knave. Tax not our patience.
Johnny grimaced and unslung his shield. This belonged to Huitzilopochtli. It's gotta be valuable. I'll hand it over to you.
Nothing stolen can you use, living boy.
The black orb twisted like a living thing in her hand. Then what am I supposed to offer, huh? You want the cape? You want me to rescue my mom in my birthday suit, Cochina?
Imbecile, I care not for baubles or bits of rock. There is something precious to me, however, flowing through your very veins. If you would pass between these thrones, you must spill some of your blood.
Carol's stomach dropped. No, no, Johnny, don't. There's got to be another way. Don't worry, sis. I'll be all right. It's just a little blood. I'll shift, heal, and be good as new. He got closer to the stone basin and looked up at the spectral queen of the dead. So, how does this work? In answer, she leapt from her throne and, suspended in the air above him, slashed at his left arm with her sickle, opening a long gash from wrist to elbow. Her orb floated free as she seized his hand with bony fingers and directed the flow of blood into the stone receptacle. Christ, that freaking hurts. You. Johnny stared at the rising level of red. That's enough, no? Let go of me already. Carol, without thinking, moved to intervene, but Mitekasiwato released her brother before she had a chance to confront the goddess. Johnny collapsed to the floor, his face white. Shift, Johnny, shift! His body jerked and twisted, and soon the jaguar lay before her, growling weakly. Struggling to all fours, it bared its teeth at Lady Death.
Save your crude insults for your own mother, knave. She deserves them more. Be that as it may, you have paid the toll. Be gone with you.
Twitching his tail in anger, Johnny padded between the thrones and passed through the archway. Carol followed, eager to put the skeletal sovereigns behind her, desperate to see her mother again.